Hello again. This is my life, and I'm Grandpa D. If you're interested in why I'm doing this, watch my introduction. And this is the second part. Uh, at this point, we were still living at on El Cajon Boulevard, 5312 was our address. I'll never forget it. And I was still going to first grade along with my sister. We'd take a bus and a city bus down to the proper street. I can't remember where it was on El Cajon, and walk over from there to the school that I was going to. At that point, since we had been attacked by the Japanese in Hawaii, we were still concerned about, or at least some of the people were, I don't think I was so concerned about the fact that we may get bombed by the Japanese. And so we had air drills at school. We would get up out of our chairs. We would follow one of the teachers and have somebody else in back of us. We'd go 2 by 2 down the street, out of the school and down the street. We'd go about 3 or 4 blocks across the main avenue, which was Adams Avenue. And a few blocks from there was a tree. It was a weeping willow tree. It was fairly big. And we would all get under the tree. And there under the tree, we would stand until the time for us to quit the air drill and go back. Now, you may have heard about air drills, air raid drills, back in the 50s. In the 50s, everybody was afraid of nuclear weapons. At that time, they just told you to get under your desk. There wasn't anything that we could do beyond that. But at this time, getting outside, getting under a tree where the planes couldn't see us was apparently the idea. Not much protection, but it was there. At the end of that year, after I got through the first grade, I started second grade at another school that was nearby. And right now, I can't remember the name of the school, but it was just off of El Cajon Boulevard, in walking distance from where I was. And I started going to that one. I went that for 1 year and that was the second grade, then it started the third grade. And sometime within the third grade, my folks found out that the owner of the house we were living in was going to sell the house. He wanted to get out of it. They were going to tear it down and build apartment buildings. So we had to leave. And my folks had saved up a little money and decided that they would try to buy a house. There were a lot of houses being built at that point because of the influx of people because of the war. And they were able to buy a place. It was near 49th Street and Federal Boulevard for any San Diegans. And we moved over there. It was a small house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. And by that time, one of my sisters, my oldest sister, was married. Her husband had gone into the army. And when we moved into the house, there were the 4 girls, the 2 boys, my parents, in 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and small at that. My sisters had 1 bedroom. I slept along with my brother in the bedroom with my folks to begin with. We later bought a couch and a float-out sleeping couch to put in the living room, and we slept out there. But in the beginning, we were in with our parents. This was wartime. And there were a number of things that we found. One of them was that we began to see our cousins. There were a lot of our cousins ended up in the military, and those that went in the Marines or the Navy, and a lot of them in the Navy, ended up in San Diego. So we would have on Sunday dinner. It was very seldom that we didn't have some military, some of the Navy, or I don't remember any that were in the Marines, but some sailors there, and they'd bring their friends. We used to play football out in front of the house. We had a big wide street. I was going to school then it was called Cholla. It's the name of a cactus. It's Challas. And it was a temporary school at that time. If you looked at it, it wasn't like trailers, but it had been built quickly. There was a section near there where a lot of very quick homes were built to house service members and their families. So there was a lot of temporary stuff going on around San Diego. I walked to school. It was about, I guess, about 4 or 5 city blocks. Most of it was across a big field. And there was a trail across that. It was scrub brush on both sides. We occasionally saw tarantulas. I never saw a snake in all the time that we were there. But we would see these very large spiders occasionally, which we'd allow to go across before we did. But we easily walked to school. In the back of our property, there was a very large field, again, scrub brush mainly, because this was an arid area. There wasn't much of anything else. And so my friends and I used to go out there and build forts and play and hunt rabbits or something. I'm not sure that we ever caught, no, we never hit anything. We had slingshots and we would, those we made. And I had a BB gun. And so we'd go out there and play and go for pretty long distances. There was a movie called Stand By Me about some kids who, in their case, they learned there was a body somewhere. So they decided to take a trip to go there. And that was pretty much the kinds of things, if you watch that and watch the way those kids interacted and the way they did, that was pretty much me and my friends. In fact, I do remember a trestle that was a place we used to walk. The railroad was a little ways from our house, not so close that we would hear the trains all the time. We could hear them the distance, but there was a trestle bridge I remember that the trains went across that we used to cross after listening very carefully to see if a train was coming. Then my brother-in-law came back home again. He had a medical discharge, and so they needed a place to live. And there was no way to find living space around San Diego. So my dad built a little room, just a room, in the back of the garage. And it was big enough, it was about half of a 2-car garage, and allowed my oldest sister and her husband to live there. They still only had the bathroom in the house. So it was just adding one person in that way. And then one of my cousins came to live with us. Her husband was in the Coast Guard. And when they got to San Diego, they thought they'd be able to find a place to live. They couldn't. And because of his situation, they wouldn't let him live on base. And besides, there wasn't any base housing left. So she came to live with us for a while until they could find a place to live. And she had a baby. So although he was on the base, we had one more plus a baby. I'll never forget drying my hands one time in the kitchen on a wet diaper and realizing what it was. It was crowded, very crowded. My folks did get a chest of drawers and put it in the hallway that my brother and I used. That was our place, and there was a broom closet that my father put a little some hangers in, and so again, my brother and I used the broom closet and the chest of drawers. And I have no idea how my sisters were able to all get into that room along with my cousin. At that point, then there would be four, plus a baby. And it was something else, I'll tell you. Up until at that, when we moved in, I was about 8 years old, and we lived in that house. The other thing, and I talked about this the other day, that the dining room wasn't all that big. We had a table that was a fairly small table. I don't know how we got everybody around the table, but our meal times were there. We somehow or other, everybody was able to sit around the table in the small dining room. And we had not only our family, but again, we often had 2 or 3 or 4 sailors that cousins and their friends that stayed with us, and all fit in somehow. We had the dog that we had gotten before. He was in the backyard, and we had grass in the front yard, but there was no way to grow grass in the backyard. It was the kind of soil that you simply don't grow grass on. In fact, nothing really was growing on it. It was almost all, not that my dad didn't try. They did try, but there was no way to do it. We had it, as I said, we had the dog. And at some point, and I'm not sure exactly how old I was when this happened, we got a duck. We got it as a, it was one of these things where Easter time, they give you little ducklings. And one of these ducks lived. We, of course, called him Donald. He lived, and the dog and the duck got along pretty well, but they got along like brothers, like a couple of brothers, like me and my brother, fighting all the time. The duck would come up behind the dog and peck at the dog until the dog would chase it. And then it would run across and we thought at first it was the dog that was getting after the duck. We blamed the dog for it. We'd tell the dog, don't do that. And so the dog didn't want to chase the duck. But after a while, we found out that the duck was doing it. The duck was going behind the dog and pecking it on the backside over and over and over again till the dog just couldn't stand it anymore, would jump up and chase the duck. The other problem, though, was that we had no dryers in those. There were no clothes dryers. And so what we had was a clothesline in the back. And my sisters were the ones that would go out and put clothes up on the line. Well, when they would go up to put clothes on the line, the duck would come around and start pecking at them. They're pecking at their legs and so on. And so they didn't like that. They couldn't get them to stop. They used to get to me, try to grab all my pant leg and pull me when I go out. And we decided we needed to change it. So my dad bought some fencing and put up a little fence in the back on one side, kept the duck in there and the dog outside. And that was the way it was for quite a while. As far as I was concerned, I went from about 8 years old until I got married, age 21, in that house. For a long time lived there. And it was a great place to be. We had a lot of time. Okay, that's number 2. And we'll do another one later. So long until I see you again.